Hi, I'm here with Southern fiction author Heather Norman Smith, and I'm meeting her for the first time right along with y'all. So I am happy to introduce her. And Heather, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Jennifer, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to meet you and be with you. So I am a Southern fiction author. I live in North Carolina. I've lived here my whole life. So right now, and for several years, I've lived right outside Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Some people may know it's pretty prominent city. Um, but I'm married and I have 4 kids and lots of pets, and our life is very, very busy. But I've been writing Christian fiction since 2017 is when it first really hit me that I needed to write a book. And that first book was published in 2019, and really enjoying the writing journey.
Awesome. I did notice you have several books published. What I have here is Shenanigans, which was well, first was your Grace and Lavender, right?
Mm-hmm.
February 2019. Then you have Where I Was Planted in July of 2019. Then Shenanigans in 2020, March, and then New Transportation Wine Country in 2021. So and now the new one we're talking about today mostly is Songs for Sunday that comes out actually in February. Is that true?
That's right. I'm very excited about Songs for a Sunday. One reason is that it's actually set in Winston-Salem. So
Oh,
it was
nice.
has a special connection.
Well, you all these eclectic books. You have 5 books, started publishing only 3 years ago. That's quite a bit of publishing. Now, are you traditionally published, indie published? How do you do that?
So 3 of those already published novels were through a small press. And then one of those I did self-publish. And just to kind of see both sides of things and how they work. Um, and so this upcoming book is with Iron Stream Media, and that's been a great experience. But they are, like you said, a little bit eclectic, because when I got started, it was just these stories came to me and I had to get them out. And didn't give a lot of thought there in the beginning of genre, who my target audience was. It was just these stories that were kind of burning inside of me and I needed to write. And so I wrote whatever came to me because they came so fast. Like you said,
Right.
I published several in a short period of time. Because once I started writing, I couldn't stop. And so I would be in the middle of one story and the next one would come to me and I would start making notes. And there wasn't a lot of, planning of, oh, is this genre I want to write? It was about the story. It was about these
Right.
characters that I had on my heart, and a theme. There's a lot of common themes amongst the books. Grace and Lavender does have a thread of a message about adoption, which is something that's very important to me. Where I Was Planted has a little bit of that as well, about taking care of young people who may not have the best situation. And so a lot of that was kind of the catalyst for I needed to get these stories out because they had messages that were very
Right.
important to me.
Right. And in that, you have all these books, and you just said you have 4 kids, right? 4 kids. How in the world do you find time to write? Because obviously, and I don't know how long these books are. Do you have like a word length about how long they are? Do you know?
So the first book is a much shorter novel. Um, by some classifications, it would be a novella.
Okay.
That one is 45,000 words. With the second one, I got to 76,000, I think, which is more standard, more
Right.
traditional
Right.
length. The third one was 69,000. The fourth one was actually a follow up to my first book. So it became part of a series. And so it was the same length at 45,000 words. And so this fifth novel, I finally hit 80,000 words, which was my goal, because I kind of write short. So I'm going to write a novel and make it 80,000 words, which I know for some people that's still short. But that was a accomplishment for me. But I do stay up very late at night to write these books. So I am blessed with 4 kids, but life is very, very busy. And I do work a day job. So
Oh
fortunately,
my
also
gosh.
very blessed to work from home, though.
Okay, good. I
Uh,
was going to say. 4
that
kids, a
helps.
day job, and writing at night. That sounds a little bit insane.
It's insane. And my husband and I are involved in ministry as well. So it is very hectic at times, but I really wouldn't have it any other way.
So you must have be a kind of a night person.
Yes, very
Yeah.
much a night person.
Okay. I don't know how, yeah, by the time, 7 o'clock rolls around, I'm done. So, but we're up
Yeah,
like
literally last night as I was working on my work in progress, which I'm getting close to the halfway point in my next book. And sometimes I will be writing and I'm dozing off as I'm writing. And then I have to go back because I realized that didn't make any sense what I just wrote. So,
wow, that's what I call a commitment. A lot of people will say, "Oh, I don't have time." They don't put the time in. It's a commitment, and you're obviously making that work for you. However hard that is, that's pretty impressive. Would you say you're a plotter or a pantser or somewhere in between?
it's funny because I just posted about this on Facebook a couple days ago. I think I'm somewhere in between. I mean, I'll try to have a general outline, but I was really surprised over the weekend because I was writing this scene where these characters are talking, and my main character said something that I did not know about him. So if you're a plotter, generally you've interviewed your characters extensively and you know
Right.
everything about them, and sometimes I will do that, but but I had more of a high level understanding of this character. And then when they were talking, he came out with something that really it kind of shaped who he is. And so I
Right.
was I was shocked. People think that sounds weird because I'm the one who wrote it,
No.
but I was still very surprised by this character.
I think every book I've ever written, and I would say I'm somewhere in between because I don't like to face a computer screen with no idea what I'm doing. But I've had a character that shows up that I wasn't expecting, and they've played a strong part of that faith message, and they have fleshed it out. That's the Holy Spirit,
Mhm.
and you have to leave room for him to work too. So I think that's a much
Absolutely.
better way. But personally, some people are really total seat of the pants. That would panic me. And
Yeah.
total plotter, that would just be too. I think it'd be too confining in a way.
Yeah. The one story that I did plot out the most, I had trouble finishing because it got boring for me because I already knew what happened. And so
Oh,
part of what kind of helps me continue and finish a book is that little bit of unknown, not
right,
knowing where it's going.
right.
So that was interesting for me. And that was a short novel. It was New Wine Transportation Company. It was 45,000 words. And I actually was able to, I thought I knew where it was going, but there were some plot twists that came along the way that did get me more excited about and help me finish it.
That is good. That's good. I was wondering too a little bit about when we talked before we started recording, you said you've kind of found your direction in your writing. You were all over the place and you found it, and that's where you've decided your Southern fiction. And so a couple of things I want to talk about is one, some people may not know what Southern fiction is. I thought it was pretty well known, but I'm finding out differently. And two, I want to hear more about Songs for Sunday. So why don't you explain to people what Southern fiction is in a nutshell?
Well, I found that as I was started writing, all my books are set in North Carolina. And part of that's because it's what I know. You write
Right.
what you're familiar with. And so I've always lived here. And but not just that, but that I am very proud of my home state. And I wanted to, try to demonstrate the beauty of North Carolina in my stories, but not just the landscape and the environment, but the people as well. So Southern fiction, I think it's very important that the setting is a character.
Right.
And that's one of the main definitions in my mind, is that the setting really plays an important role in just the overall tone and the feel of the story.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you. I think it's a cultural thing. It's the way people talk. It's the way people think. It's the yes, ma'am, and yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in Northern California. And so people say, oh, moving to Tennessee must have been a cultural shock. It was, but it was a good cultural shock. It's like I felt like I've always should have been from here. And I do think that the same thing, it needs to be part of, it's another character in your story, basically. That's
Yeah.
set. And so tell us a little bit about Songs for Sunday.
Songs for Sunday is my first split time novel.
Oh,
So that was another fun thing and a fun challenge. And I actually say in the author's notes, I talk about that fun challenge a little bit because it was largely written during 2020. So that was, of course, that was a challenge for everybody
right.
in itself. When I was home with 4 kids, but and we were all home together, while I was trying to write that book. But Songs for Sunday is set in Winston-Salem. So that was another very fun challenge. So of my previous books, most of them were based on fictional towns. So they're set in North Carolina, but Grace and Lavender, Where I Was Planted, and New One Transportation Company are based on fictional towns that are based on a real town, but I'd used a different name. I had only done one other story that was set in a real place, and that was Shenanigans. It's set in Southport, North Carolina. And that was a fun beach story to write. But living here, I live in a community called Louisville, just right outside Winston-Salem, which is the 5th largest city in our state, and lots of history here. And our city, Winston-Salem, is actually its motto or its nickname is the let's see, I've forgotten it now. The city of it's based on arts. Very well known for, we were the first city in the country to have a public arts council, a city arts council. And so a lot of those themes play into the story. Oh, sorry, City of Arts and Innovation. That's the word I was looking for. So we have the North Carolina School of the Arts here, and it was the first public conservatory for the arts. And so that institution plays a big part in this story, Songs for Sunday. So it is split time. We have one thread in present day, and we have one thread in the 1960s. And that was when the school began. So lots of fun research went into that. Just that era, the 1960s, I enjoy studying and writing about.
Well, I'm excited to be able to read that. I love split time, but I also have been kicking around that same idea. There's something about the 60s and 70s, a different time period. It's, we think about it as being historical, but some of us have actually lived through those days, and it feels a little bit unfair to call it historical, but there are things that happened in that time period looking back that are pretty instrumental in where we are today. So I think that's incredible. This month is NaNoWriMo. I know I have some writer friends that are they jump right on board with that NaNoWriMo, and they post what they write every day. And I personally have never done it. It's too much pressure for me, and I'm not willing to write on Sundays, and I need to take a weekend day off. And so have you ever done the NaNoWriMo?
I've entertained the thought, but no, not officially. I think when I hear other people talking about it and their word count, I think sometimes it does motivate me, to try to be more diligent and in my word count during the month of November, but I've never officially tried it.
So what would you say your typical word count is for a decent, and do you write every day, or do you only write a few nights a week, or how do you do that?
It kind of comes and goes. When I first started writing in 2017, it came at me so fast, this desire to write and get this story out, that I was writing all the time. Any free moment that I got, I was writing. And so back then, 2017, 2018, 2019, I was pretty good at getting a consistent 1,000 words a day. It was a decent word count for me. When 2020 hit, that number, it went down drastically. And a lot of it was just, emotionally, it was harder to write during that time. So it comes and goes. I'm not as prolific as I once was, and I think the reason for that, honestly, is the main reason is that the longer I write, the harder it gets to write because I've learned more of how I should write. And it's not as easy as it used to be.
It slows you down while you're editing.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
now that I know more of the rules of
Right.
writing, I have more work to do.
Right.
So,
That's
so
true.
I'm happy if I get 500 words in a day now.
Well, you know, considering the fact that you're raising a family, you're working full time, it sounds like you've got a ministry. I think 500 words a day is pretty darn good. You know,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
I
I'm
write
content with that.
I do a full time writing. And so if I don't pull off 2,000 to 3,000 words a day, I feel like I'm failing, but it's full time writing. I'm not doing anything else.
Yeah.
And I think it's true. I'm curious with your writing. Like my first interview that I had was with author Carolyn Miller. I don't know if you know her. She's actually she does NaNoWriMo, and last year she did 80,000 words. And I said, how is it even possible? She dictates a lot of what she writes. So she's dictating it and then she'll go back and write it, and she doesn't do any editing. So for me, I can't get into the next scene until I've been emotionally into the last scene, and I go back through it. I go back and edit it. I get it all as clean as I can. And it's almost like you have to revisit the characters and get back in that mood to be in their head. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. And that typically is my strategy as well. That before I can really get into the next scene, I've got to go back and reread what I did before and kind of pick up, a feel for where I left off. So
right.
that's
and
very
that slows
important.
you down.
I'm at a point now in my current story where things are kind of popping in my mind that maybe I should have done. I'm at the halfway point. And now I'm thinking, like, I just realized yesterday, and it'll be the most random. I'll be cooking dinner or whatever, getting ready to go somewhere, and something will pop in my head. And I realized my character needs goldfish. Now that might sound insignificant, but like it was important it could be significant to my story.
Right.
So I'm halfway through now. Now I've got to go back and find those places where I can put this goldfish, And so just adding those layers,
which are really important.
Yeah, it's a fun process. It's almost like in some ways putting together a puzzle. And everybody goes about it differently, with their method.
Right. We all have our ways.
You end up with a complete picture at the end. But yeah, I'm at this point in this current work in progress that I'm finding those things that can really enhance, characterization that maybe is just now at the halfway point starting to come out. So it's been a lot of fun.
Well, it's, I think, important to give them layers so their characters are three-dimensional rather than just flat. And I think that, I'm like really big into deep point of view, and that takes it takes a lot to get in there.
Right. Yeah. So when we talked about how I published so many, early on, and that was another thing that now that I have studied more of the writing conventions, some of my earlier works, now I only write deep POV, or I strive to. When I first started writing, I didn't know about that was the most popular modern convention as far as writing. I look back and it's like, that first story, it's not wrong. It wasn't third person omniscient isn't, incorrect, but it's not what readers today are used to.
Right.
So that was a learning process.
Well, I think different writers have different styles, because I've been reading a lot of books that I've been reading recently. Melissa Tagg, she's got this Harbor series that's really good, and her deep POV is really rich, and I see that, how important that is. But I've also finished a cozy mystery. There was no deep point of view at all, and that's a style thing. Because when I review a book, it's important to me to see deep point of view, but there are a lot of people that say that I just don't write it that way. And some people don't care. So it's a style thing. So, it goes back and forth. So tell us, we kind of got off track. Tell us about Songs for Sunday. What is that story about?
Well, it opens in the present day with, it's a little bit biographical, because the main character is a mother of four. and there are a lot of parallels between her children and mine. Actually, some real life events that happened, some funny things I was able to throw in there that my kids had done. But we have our main character, Missy, who is a stay-at-home mom, though she doesn't have a full-time job, and her sister is a backup singer for a famous country music artist. And so there's this little bit of jealousy between her, who stayed home to help out her parents, to help out her grandmother, and the sister who's off, living her best life.
Right.
Even though Missy, Melissa is her proper name, even though she wouldn't change anything, there's still this seed of jealousy that she's going to have to contend with in this story. But she is given an opportunity to sing at an event very unexpectedly, and it's going to that moment in the spotlight is going to help her start this path of kind of self-discovery, leaving the things that she had left behind maybe when she started her family, that she can regain some of that for herself. But in the meantime, she's going to uncover a secret about her family,
which is where your 1960 split time comes in.
Exactly. So in the 1960s thread, and it is I think a pretty classic split time structure, it alternates chapter by chapter for the most part throughout the book. So the main character in the 1960s timeline is her grandmother as a young woman. So her grandma Annie, who, when her younger sister, her 16-year-old sister, and she's 20 when the book opens, she has special needs. And of course, in that time, they wouldn't necessarily have been diagnosed in maybe the same way that they would be today. So I don't really go into that classification of what her needs are, but I try to describe it in a way where a reader can kind of glean that and have an understanding.
Yeah.
But so she has some differences, some neurodivergencies, and you learn it's not a spoiler, you learn pretty early on in the book that this 16-year-old finds herself, she gets pregnant, and so now Annie, as her big sister, has this weight to bear on the behalf of her family, that she's going to need to step up and make some hard decisions, and that they end up changing what she thought the course of her life was going to be.
Wow.
So in those, so in the current timeline, some family secrets come to light, and now Missy's burdened with whether or not she divulges those secrets, or if she honors her grandmother's wishes to keep them secret.
So her grandmother's still alive?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well,
yeah,
that
Grandma
sounds really intriguing.
Yeah, Grandma Annie is a character in the present day timeline as well.
Oh, good. Okay, wonderful. Well, that book comes out February. I have here February 7th, correct?
That's right.
Yeah.
It's available for pre-order now on Amazon.
Wow, that's awesome. That'll be pretty exciting. So, Songs for Sunday, and I'm writing down these little notes, Heather, and they may not make any sense. They don't make any sense to me, but they may to you. I put a thing, Iron Stream Fiction. Is that the company that's publishing it? Iron Stream Fiction? You called it media?
Right. Iron Stream Media. I think the imprint is Iron Stream Fiction.
Okay. Awesome. So how did you find your publishers? Are you agented? How did you do that?
So this story, I was very honored to have pitched this story to Eva Marie Everson.
Oh yeah.
At the Blue Ridge Mountains Christian Writers Conference.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually had some communication for a number of months back and forth about this project. And eventually it was acquired through her by Iron Stream. And then she was my editor. So that was a marvelous experience. And a dream come true. I try not to gush too much, but I think she knows how honored I was that she edited that story for me.
Well, she gets around, because I think she was, I did the Writers Guild class, gosh, I don't know how many years ago, and she ended up being my my teacher in that. So she gets around.
Yeah, she travels extensively to various writers conferences, and I met her. I started going to Blue Ridge. It's only 2 hours from my home, and
Right.
so I feel like I can never miss Blue Ridge because it's just too convenient, and I love it so much anyway. So I think I started writing in 2017, in July 2017, when I first started writing my very first story, and I found out about the conference and went that next May 2018, and I've gone every year since. And so the conference that I pitched it to her, I think was the year they pushed it back for COVID, and it was November of 2020. Normally it's held in May, but it was in November.
Right.
So, and actually, that conversation, that first conversation was November of 2020, and then I signed a contract November of 2021 for this
Wow.
story, for this book.
Well,
So it
that's
can be
amazing.
a lengthy process, but it's been a wonderful experience so far working with Iron Stream.
Well, that's good. Yeah, I can imagine if Evan Marie Everson is involved in it. I just joined Word Weavers not too long ago, and I know she is involved in that as well. And I was supposed to go to the Blue Ridge with a friend of mine last May, but she ended up getting breast cancer.
Oh,
And I just didn't have the heart to go, but I'm going to go next year. I have a friend actually flying in from Canada who's going to go with me. And I have
wonderful.
other friends that are going to be there too. So it'll be fun. It's a 5-hour drive for me, but still better than flying, and it's doable. Definitely
Absolutely.
doable. Yeah. I used to go to the Mount Hermon Writers Conference in the Santa Cruz Mountains every year for
Mhm.
years and years and years. So it's nice to have one you can drive to. So, well, any last thoughts that you want to leave us with? Things that you want to share? I do know I wrote down, this is, I think, important, and this came from your blurb. It said her goal is to use the written word to entertain and encourage while illuminating the redemptive love of God. So that's kind of your tag, right? Your overarching
Right.
mission.
When you asked if I had anything else, that's exactly what I was going to say. So I'm glad you brought that up.
I'm
Uh,
sorry, I cut that off of you.
no, it's fine. So yeah, this whole journey of writing, it did come as a surprise to me, and I'm very grateful for it. But there was this moment of, because I actually, slight confession, I was not a reader of Christian fiction before I started writing Christian fiction.
I
Of
wasn't
course,
either,
now
just so you know.
uh, that makes me feel better. Now, of course, I love it, and I have lots of author friends who I read regularly. But it when I started writing this story, obviously, you know, faith was going to be in a very important thread. But there was this moment when I first started that I thought, wait a minute, you mean I can write a book and tell people about Jesus at the same time? I mean, it was just this light bulb moment of, wow, that's what I'm supposed to do. And so I really try to include what I feel like is a strong faith message
Right.
in every book that I write, and that is very important to me. And I hope people walk away with that when they read any of my work.
I think it would be now, when I first, I put it was on my heart to write when I was 12. So
Mhm.
a long time, way before I became a born again Christian.
Mm.
So my mind was on something else. And so now though, I didn't start writing until after I became a Christian. I mean, seriously writing. I've written for years, but not seriously, with an agent and the whole bit working on that. I can't imagine writing any story that doesn't have a faith message because it's an integral part of who we are.
Exactly.
And how do you have hope in a story where the characters don't have hope in the story?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And it can be different between stories. I mean, sometimes it's a character who may be struggling with a specific issue and they need to give it to God. It might be someone who had faith and walked away. And it's done organically, I think, just
Right,
because, like you said, it's part of who we are. So
right.
that's going to come out. And in Songs for a Sunday, I feel like of any story that I've written so far, it has the most clear gospel message. I feel like, because there's a character who has a conversion experience, and the scene was one of my most favorite that I've ever written,
Mm.
any of my stories, was the moment that she realizes her need for God and truly surrenders her life to Him. So I feel like it's a very emotional scene, and I hope it will touch people's hearts when they read it.
Well, I'm sure it will. I'm excited to read it. I can't wait. So I'm so glad that we got to have this little chat and talk about your books and find out a little bit more about you. And I will make sure all the stuff goes in the show notes so people will know how to find you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And again, if we do end up posting the video, I'm coming to you from my RV that's parked in my driveway just because it was a quiet place to be. So I appreciate that opportunity I came out here to hide away for a little bit so that we could chat. But it was really nice to meet you, and I appreciate you having me on your show.
Well, you too, and I hope I see you at the Blue Ridge Conference next year.
Definitely, that'd be great.
Perfect. Well, thanks very much, and wish you all the best, Heather. Bye.
Thank you.